Revelation 12:11 says, "And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony." Welcome to the Word of Their Testimony podcast. Hey friends, and welcome back to the show. I'm so glad you're here today because we've got a truly powerful episode ahead. I'm joined by Rebecca Ververs, a certified natural health professional and hormonal health expert who is deeply passionate about helping women find healing and balance in their bodies. But beyond her professional expertise, Rebecca carries a beautiful and hard-won testimony of walking through chronic Lyme disease, miscarriage, and fertility struggles, and experiencing God's faithfulness through it all. In this conversation, we're diving into how holistic health and natural remedies played a role in her healing and how God met her in the depths of pain and uncertainty. Whether you're walking through your own health journey or simply seeking encouragement, today's episode will speak to both your body and your soul. So with that, Rebecca, I'd love to have you start by sharing a little bit of your journey with us.
Hi, yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. But yeah, I guess I'll just jump right into it. I have quite a few testimonies to share, so bear with me. It's kind of going to be a little story, but that'll be fine. So my journey with Christ and my faith has been really a very windy path, lots of ups and downs. We're going to hear about that today. I'm sharing all of this. I really want to point this out, not to bring attention to myself or to have sympathy, because there are quite a few lows that I have gone through, but rather to sing these praises to God and what he has done in my life and in my heart through all of these struggles. So I'm excited to share my testimonies. So I grew up in a Christian home. I was baptized in elementary school. And when I was young, I was on fire for Jesus. I remember I led little Bible studies during recess, and I was asking absolutely everyone, "Do you know Jesus? Do you know Jesus? Can I pray for you?" Like, I wish I could look back and see myself then, because I think I would get so much encouragement from that. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool to just see like how on fire I was at such a young age and how much I understood it. And so a little bit of background about me. I grew up in a very small town. My graduating class was probably about 30 to 40 kids. And small towns are great in a lot of ways, don't get me wrong. But for me, it was really challenging during my high school years. And that's because having the right last name or being really good at sports is how you get noticed in these towns. That's when you get a lot of attention. And both of those I didn't have. So I was looking for validation, attention, care, love, and praise from a lot of people at the school or within the community. And I just felt like an oddball. And that's really where my loneliness and depression kind of started. And from that deep depression, that led to eating disorders and substance use. And so that kind of snowballed. I remember I was far from Jesus at that time. I actually got to a point, which I like to call it my come to Jesus moment, where I was on a camping trip with my family the summer before my junior year of high school. And I was in a really dark place. I took a handful of pills that my mom had in this medicine box that we had on the camper. And I just took them. I wasn't trying to end my life. I just wanted to numb like the depression that I was feeling. And I remember I'm laying on the bed in my camper. My parents have no idea what's going on. They don't even know that I'm using. And my youngest sister, who was 8 at this time, she came back to the bed and just laid with me. And I hate thinking back to this moment because my family had to watch me, kind of like go unconscious for a while. But I remember the feeling of my little sister's hand in my hand, and just that like the world was spinning. I couldn't hear things. I couldn't really speak, but I remember the feeling of her hand in my hand, and just that overwhelming peace. Like that was Jesus right there in that moment. It's like I said, it's scary to think back because my life could have ended that day, but that sensation, like it is undoubtedly the presence of God that was in that moment, and his hand was over it. Oh, I'm like shaking just talking about it, but
Wow.
just an amazing experience. So I had that happen. Thankfully, I was okay. I shortly after put myself in treatment for my eating disorder. And through that, I rebuilt my relationship with my family and also strengthened my relationship with Jesus. And that was absolutely what I needed in that moment, was to get the help that I needed for myself and to also reconnect with my Savior, because that is what got me through all of those hard times. But kind of fast forwarding, like the Israelites, I forgot what God had done in my life when I went to college. God was the last priority on my list. I did all this stuff. I drank, I did drugs, I slept around like crazy. I was seeking love and attention, kind of like I was in high school, in all the wrong places. I was looking to fill this gap with anything but Jesus. And I remember I was dating this guy. I thought I was going to marry him. My family loved him. My friends loved him. And one day out of the blue, I get a call and he's in jail and he says, I'm in jail. You're not going to see me for a while. And I came to find out that he was a gambling addict. And when he was at his job, he was actually gambling, and he had stolen from my family, my friends, myself. And he was such a good liar that none of us even knew that he was doing it. And what I know now about natural health and about how stress can actually manifest into illness in our bodies. So I got sick with chronic Lyme disease very shortly after that stressful situation. And that's because the stress caused the chronic Lyme to rise to the surface. So I got completely sick very fast, and it turned my life upside down. Like, I couldn't party anymore. I couldn't even drive anymore. I had to switch most of my classes on campus to online, and my life just changed. I was really sick mentally and physically.
So for those who don't know, like, what is Lyme disease?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Lyme disease, yeah, lots of people don't know about it, actually. So it's an illness that you get from a tick. It's a tick bite, and a lot of the times when you get bit by a tick, you actually don't get sick, but sometimes you do get sick and it can go dormant in your body. And like the experience that I went through, it can rise to the surface when you're going through seasons of really high stress.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of co-infections that come along with Lyme disease, like Babesia, Bartonella, and there's a couple others. And each of those co-infections come with their own sort of symptoms. But essentially what it can do to your brain and your body is, like, your body can kind of shut down in a way, chronic fatigue, and lots of pain within your body. That's one of the main things that I felt was just pain. And it's very hard to diagnose because the tests suck, and there's not a lot of research there. So it's hard to get diagnosed, and a lot of doctors don't know about it. So, yeah. So thankfully for me, I found a naturopath that I worked with. We tried pharmaceuticals at first because pharmaceuticals are kind of the traditional go-to for Lyme disease. We tried that, and I did antibiotics for probably a little bit over a year, and I was getting so much more sick. And so we switched over to herbal medications and natural healings, changing my lifestyle, that sort of stuff. And that's when I started to see the biggest changes in my life. And one of the main things that I was experiencing when I was very sick with Lyme for all the years that I was mental health illness. And that's because Lyme can invade itself into your brain, your heart. It can invade itself anywhere. And it had really invaded my brain. So I was experiencing so many things that I'd never felt before. I was paranoid. I was seeing things and hearing things that weren't there. I was having panic attacks throughout the day. I couldn't sleep. I was depressed. I was anxious. Like, every day had its new bag of symptoms that I had to experience. And that was like, no one knew how I felt. No one could jump into my body and feel the way that I was trapped in my own brain. And that is when I was like, I had to slow down and just give it to Jesus. And that's when I kind of, like, I don't want to say recommitted my life to Jesus, but I guess sort of. And I just had to give it to him because he's the only one that knew what I was feeling physically and mentally. And he's the only one that could bring the peace that I was seeking, because it was such a scary time. I remember thinking, what if I feel like this for the rest of my life? Like, I can't survive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just remember he would softly say, like, this is just a season and I'm going to use it someday in your life. This is going to be used for good someday in your life. So I just really held on to that. I basically got a PhD in Lyme disease because of how much I researched it and natural healing remedies, and I got through it, and I'm in remission, and praise to the Lord, because that remission is it can be very hard to achieve with chronic Lyme disease. So that is something that I will praise for the rest of my life the Lord for.
Okay, so I have to ask, like, what different things did you do to heal from that?
Oh, absolutely. So I had to change my eating, was one of the main things that I had to change, and not drinking alcohol, which I was doing in college. I had to stop that because sugar and yeast and all of that kind of stuff can actually feed the Lyme. So I had to kind of go on a very strict diet of no sugar, no gluten, no dairy, like just eating very bland, whole foods. So that got me to a point. I was also doing ozone therapy, which is basically where they take the blood out of your body, they put ozone into it, and then they put it back into your body. And that was another thing that got me to this point.
Oh,
Herbal
wow.
remedies. So there's a slew of herbal remedies. So some of them are called like ABAB, ABART, just a bunch of different herbs that can target those co-infections within your body.
Okay.
So those are the things that I think got me to the point that I'm at now. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Through my journey with Lyme disease, like I said, that's when I got a passion for natural health because even though the herbs took a lot longer to get me to the point that I am today, they didn't cause the side effects that I was getting from the pharmaceuticals and they didn't cause the alternative conditions, if that makes sense. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
with pharmaceuticals, you treat one thing and then another thing pops up because you're not treating the disease, you're kind of treating the symptoms, if that makes sense. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from that, I'm like, I went to school for psychology, but this is when I kind of had a switch in my heart, and I'm like, okay, I didn't go through this for nothing. Like, I need to build a career and teach people how they can heal themselves and prevent illnesses with the things that God has given us on this earth, like the plants, the herbs, all of this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
so I was wrestling for quite a while with God, like trying to figure out like what is my niche? Am I helping people with Lyme disease or mental health illnesses or eating disorders or like where am I going with this? And it felt like he was being very quiet for a long time. All I knew that was that I had to continue my studies and learn more and just wait and trust that he was going to speak to me and tell me which direction to go.
Mm.
And last summer was actually when I just had the aha moment and Jesus spoke to me. I got pregnant in June and we only tried for a month. My husband and I were so excited. And we went in for the first ultrasound and my midwife told me your baby doesn't have a heartbeat. And that rocked my
Hmm.
world. I was so broken. I didn't understand, and I had to wait for a couple of weeks with that little lifeless baby inside of me to confirm at a following ultrasound that the pregnancy wasn't viable. So those couple of weeks where I was waiting to get in for that second ultrasound felt like years. Like I just
Yeah.
wanted. I thought as soon as I'm able to have this miscarriage, I'm going to feel better. That wasn't the case. I had the miscarriage. I'm still broken. I'm like, okay, as soon as I get my period back, as soon as I
Hmm.
get pregnant again, the pain's going to go away. Nope, I couldn't get pregnant. I'm still struggling with fertility, but I remember every month when I would get my period after my miscarriage, and like, I would just be so broken. I was still mourning the loss of this little life, and I felt so lonely. My husband also was in pain about this, but he didn't experience that excitement that something's in my stomach growing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a couple weeks before Easter, that's when I kind of had another come to Jesus moment where I did my very first fast. I'm like, okay, I just got to pray about getting pregnant. I just got to, I was kind of spinning. I'm like, what do I
Mm-hmm.
do? I just got to pray about it. So I went into this fast thinking, I just got to pray about getting pregnant. And my prayers changed. It was so cool to watch from God, please help me to get pregnant to God, help me to know you more. Help me to build my relationship with
Wow.
you more and help me to recognize your voice. And so from that moment, I have felt so much peace. I'm saying peace a lot throughout my testimonies, but like I felt so much peace from that moment and so much clarity in my business. And I want to help women that are struggling with fertility issues and hormone issues and all of the stuff, you know what I mean, that we have to go through and that we're silently suffering in. And so my fast just turned things around. God has been so present in my life, and He's really healed that wound that was opened up from that miscarriage. And I had a second miscarriage in May, which was about
Mm.
I think I was 6 weeks along, but I didn't have the same empty, hopeless feeling after that. Like since then, I have felt a peace of knowing it's not my time yet. And I have a 3.5-year-old stepson, and I think God has really just opened my eyes to you have this precious little human that you get to spend 4 to 5 days with a week, depending on his mom's schedule and everything. And that's your little person right now. That is the person that I've given you to love and to see grow and care for. And so that's what I try to redirect my focus to is focusing on him rather than chasing this dream that I really want, like not giving up on praying about it or hoping for it or having faith that God will bring me a baby someday, but being content in where I'm at now and being present with the Lord and dedicating time to spend with the Lord and really being with my family and just treasuring it and being thankful for what I have, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh my
Thanks.
goodness. So now, were you given the direction from God as how he wants you to help women specifically?
Specifically, so women's health, yes, but this is so weird to me because I'm feeling him call me to help people specifically struggling with infertility
Mm-hmm.
and miscarriages. And I'm like, how in the world am I supposed to do that when I don't have it figured out myself? And I haven't achieved it yet, so how can I help other people? But so that's just like kind of the doubts in my mind of how am I going to do that? But it's been so clear, like this is the path that I'm supposed to go down, and this is the population that I am to serve. You know what I mean?
I love that. Yeah. I have a few questions for you. So,
Yeah.
what is your go to when you're feeling unwell, like both spiritually and physically?
Just taking hot baths. That's always been kind of a coping mechanism for me is taking a
Mm-hmm.
hot Epsom salt bath, sweating out the toxins, being outside in nature, going for a walk, even if it's frigid cold outside, going outside and getting some sun on my face for a couple minutes, journaling, being creative, crocheting, just kind of doing something to keep my mind busy and keep me not focused on my physical pain or like if I'm mentally stressed or anxious or whatever's going on up there. I
Mm-hmm.
also love my herbs that I use. I have a variety of different herbs that I use for different things that I'm feeling physically or mentally, as well as foods. I just try to eat with my cycle and do cycle syncing. All of that stuff really helps when I'm not feeling well and helps to keep me on track hormonally, physically, mentally, spiritually. This is when I have to close my bedroom door and go and sit on my bed and just play worship music and pray and cry and read my Bible and really spend as much time as I possibly can with the Lord because I can go and be fed at church, which also fills my cup. That also helps. But spending time with Jesus and building a one-on-one relationship with him is what really helps me when I'm spiritually feeling distant or confused.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And so those were the tools that you used like when you went through this painful season of grief and
Hmm.
miscarriages. And it's interesting, like you were saying, it was kind of unexpected the direction that you felt God was bringing you in. But I feel like, since you've been through that, and it's a hard pain to understand unless you've been through it. And I think that not only are you able to, help use your knowledge of like holistic healing to help women with fertility, but also you can offer that empathy, like I've been there and I know
Hmm.
exactly what you're going through, so they know that they're in good hands. And I
Hmm.
think that makes a huge difference. And I was just curious, like, do you think that we're seeing a higher amount of infertility in the present day than like we've seen in the past? And if so, like, why do you think that is?
Oh, completely. If you research it, like the research speaks for itself. Infertility rates or miscarriages are going up and up and up. And I think a big piece of that is because of, I mean, I can go on and on about this because I'm so passionate about it, but about the crap that's in our food and all the processed stuff that we
Mm-hmm.
eat and all the things that are popular right now. So smoking, vaping, nicotine, all of that crap, drinking. But I think really I think the food that we eat and what we're putting into our bodies has such a bigger effect than anyone even understands. You know what I mean? So I think that totally plays a part in it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, and that makes sense because, as we go through this journey of human life on the earth, God didn't create these businesses making all these processed foods. And, it's like as
Hmm.
we've evolved, there's been more chemicals and more things put in our food, our atmosphere,
Hmm.
everything that we encounter, and that wasn't God's like original design. And so it makes
Hmm.
sense, if we get back to eating whole foods and to let the food be the medicine, that would make a huge shift in healing and to get our bodies back into balance of how God originally intended it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what would you recommend to someone if they think that they're struggling with some type of hormonal issue?
I would say for them to get help sooner than later
Mhm.
because the longer those things go on, the worse you're going to feel.
Mhm.
I actually have a friend who I think has PCOS. She is talking to me, I don't have my period for 3 to 4 months. I'm like, dude, that is not normal. Like, she's like, what? I've always been like that. I'm like, no. And she has additional symptoms on top of that. I'm like, you have to get help, bro, because it takes your body a while to grasp what you're doing. Like, hormonal issues can take anywhere from 6 months to a year and sometimes longer to heal. So the sooner that you get help, the sooner that you can get your body back on track. Yeah. And I would say, like, also, I always preach this, is seed cycling can do wonders for your body. Absolutely. And also tracking your cycle. I love the idea of tracking your cycle naturally and not just running to birth control to solve any problem that you're having, because that only makes it worse. But when you naturally track your cycle, you track your cervical fluid or your cervix position or your basal body temperature in the morning, all three of those combined. When you do that, then you can confirm ovulation, because if you're not ovulating, then your hormones are screwed up. And so I think it's always important, like, even before you see a doctor, if you're in the waiting period of going to see your doctor, you can start doing that stuff and just kind of tell, am I ovulating or not? Am I having the rise of estrogen and the rise of progesterone like I'm supposed to or not? So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Okay. And, because I would just love to hear you elaborate on this. You said it's not good to take birth control. Would you mind just giving us a little snapshot of why birth control isn't good for your body?
Birth control is scary. And I was actually on it. I got off it even before I learned how harmful it was. But I was on the Mirena and I had stomach problems. I had a bunch of different issues that were not Lyme related. They came when I got the birth control or when I got the IUD. And so birth control can be harmful because it disrupts your hormones. And it's actually kind of sad to think about, because your hormones work in such a unique, like, beautiful way to keep your body and just who you are working normally, if that makes sense. Like, as a woman, there's so many things going on. We have a lot more things than men do that are going on with our hormones. And it's a beautiful balance. The whole purpose of your monthly cycle is to get pregnant. That's what God designed it for, was that you ovulate and then you have your period. And it's all because you are supposed to have babies and have kids, like, according to God's design. That's what the woman's body was designed for, was for having kids. Not saying that that's what you have to do and that's the only reason you're on this earth. But you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what our bodies were made for, was to have babies. And so when you take birth control, you are suppressing some hormones so that you don't ovulate, which is kind of scary, depending on the type of birth control that you're using. And so that's scary because that's already disrupting the beautiful balance that's going on in your body, which is why a lot of women on birth control feel a lot of depression, and then they're put on antidepressant medication, or they're really anxious and then they're given a pill for that. So there's a lot of things that you can see come up when you're on the pill or when you have an IUD, because you're halting the ovulation, you're jacking with your hormones, and then you have your period sometimes. But the period that we see with hormonal birth control is not actually a normal period. It's a pill bleed, is what they like to call it, because your hormones didn't make that period happen. The synthetic hormones that are in the birth control that jack up your hormones are the reason that you're bleeding at the end of the month.
Wow.
Yeah, it's scary. I'm passionate about that. And it's really sad that kids are being put on that, young women, girls, even if, like I said, there's ways to track your cycle and there's ways to tell, like, when you're ovulating, so that if you're trying to prevent pregnancy, like, when your safe days are, and when you're not supposed to, have fun in the bedroom because you're ovulating that time. So, yeah.
So it makes me think there almost seems to be, like, some kind of sinister agenda here with, like, different pharmaceutical medications, because they're putting inorganic hormones and synthetic chemicals into your body that are directly disrupting the natural design that God had for us.
Exactly.
And like you said, it's not really getting to the root cause. It's just fixing a symptom, but then at, like, the same time creating other symptoms. Exactly. So it's scary, like, I do think there is a place, for modern medicine and, some, like, emergency situations. But I also think that as a society, it's just become the answer for everything. And it's just really messed with a lot of people's bodies and made a lot more issues. And I really love how you're trying to get back to the good things that God has equipped us with on this earth to bring our bodies naturally back into a state of balance. And I think that's so important. And I really appreciate you doing this work.
Yeah, I think it's so important, especially today when we're continuously taught, like our doctors know everything, medicine will fix this, and we're putting so much trust there. How about we put our trust in the Lord and in the things that He's given us to heal our bodies because He didn't
Amen.
He didn't create pills when He created the planet. Like He created plants and fruits and vegetables and other things for us to heal our bodies with. So, and like you said, I do recognize and respect the place for modern medicine, but I also recognize that it's overused a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. This has been, a really great conversation, really eye-opening. And I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and open and sharing, your struggles and what you've been through, because I know everything that you've been through is just becoming more and more common, the eating disorder, the drug addictions, just living the ways of the world, and then dealing with infertility and miscarriages and all these symptoms in your body, the chronic fatigue and pain in your body that a lot of times they don't know what to call it. So they just call it fibromyalgia, which really doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
anything. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just hear about people all the time that deal with all the same struggles that you've been through. And it's just really inspiring that you reached out to God and He met you in that place of like, I don't know what's going on and I need your help, and was able to, guide you down the path of naturally finding healing for your body the way He intended it. And it's very inspiring. And yeah, I really pray that this episode, encourages someone out there who is just lost and in need of some encouragement. And I wanted to ask you, if somebody wants to get in touch with you and is looking to seek some natural healing for their problems that they're going through, how can they get in touch with you in your practice?
Yeah, so they can find me at MEND, tobloom.com. They can go there. I think I have a request appointment button on my website page. And so if they click that, we'll do a 15-minute call and we'll chat about how I can help them. Also, I'm on social media. So Mend to Bloom on Facebook. And then on Instagram, it's mend_to_bloom.
Oh, awesome.
Someone stole the easy username, so I get the underscore one.
And I'll go ahead and include all this in the show notes too. So if people want to contact you, it'll be easy for them. But is there anything else that you wanted to share?
I think just the last thing that I would want to say is, and I love your podcast because you do such a good job of highlighting this, is every one of us are going to go through a trial or a challenge in our lives, maybe multiple challenges that are really big. And using our testimonies to help bring other people to know Jesus and to grow the kingdom is such an awesome opportunity. And I think it's really important for everyone to not just hide their testimony because they're nervous or shy or they're embarrassed about it, because there's a lot of parts of my story that I'm embarrassed about, but also I speak about it because I want people to find hope and to find Jesus through what He's brought me through. So that's all I would say, is just share your testimony, whether it's with a big bunch of people or just with one person. Share your testimony and help grow this kingdom.
Awesome. Amen to that, sister. Thank you so much for your time, Rebecca. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. And yeah, this was really great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I'm so excited that I got to be on your show. Thank you.
If you were blessed by this episode, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future testimonies. And if you want to pass on the blessing to others, please leave a review and share to your page. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.